Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So we have just concluded the first month of 2022. Very, very excited. Time to do our January 2022 wrap up. I have a lot of highs this month, a lot of lows this month. Working on getting through my reading goals. If you haven't seen that video, I have a whole video that I'll link up above on what my 2022 reading goals are. A big thing was to read more than 72 books this year, which means I need to average about 6 books a month to hit that. Was able to get through 6 novels. Well, I guess not novels. I got through 6 books. 2 of them were nonfiction, which also was part of my reading goal, to read at least 2 nonfiction books. One doesn't quite count because it's more of like a guidebook, but I had a lot of fun with it. Anyway, this was a very interesting month. I had no 5-star reads and I had no 1-star reads, so we're definitely very much in the middle, but I did have some that I hated more than others and some that I loved more than others, and we're gonna get through it right now. Alright, so the first book that I dove into this year was The Savage Instinct by M.M. DeLuca. This came in my December 2021's Nightworm package. A buddy read on this with the lovely Avi Reads on Instagram and Blackacre Doe here on YouTube. I believe they both have YouTube and Instagram channels. I will link everything down below. But we we did a group buddy read on this, and I don't think any of us were very satisfied with this novel. This is the story of a woman who has just been released from a psych ward after a horrible, horrible stillbirth, and comes to find out that her husband is doing some shady, shady stuff behind her back, and she decides to befriend a notorious serial killer in prison. This wanted so badly to be Silence of the Lambs. It wanted very badly for our serial killer to be a female Hannibal Lecter, and yet it just fell very, very, very flat for me. All of the characters were extremely one-dimensional. All of their motives were completely unfounded, and I had such a hard time getting through this one. This ended up being a 2-star read for me. It had so much potential and could have gone so far and done so many interesting things, and yet again became one of those strange fictionalized retellings of a serial killer that once again painted an actual real-life serial killer in a sympathetic light, and that I can never get behind that. If you want to paint a fictional serial killer in a sympathetic light or an intriguing light like a Hannibal Lecter, totally understand that because they're not real people. This decided to kind of historical fictionalize, whatever the word is, a sympathetic figure into a real-life serial killer, and I was not okay with that, and just didn't like our main character to begin with. So 2-star read for me. Really was hoping that this was going to be a strong, very feminist, Victorian drama, and it just let me down in pretty much all of those regards. So I was not a fan of that one. However, next up, I finally picked up Gone to See the Riverman by Christopher Triana. This book has so much hype, and I will fully agree that it deserves all of the hype that it gets. I love when that happens. There's so many times where I read tons and tons of overhyped books and I'm just like, why? But no, I absolutely adored this novel. Novella, I don't know, it's like what, 160 pages, something like that. This is a very disturbing, unsettling, creepy story. I have a full video review on this novel. The story is about this woman who is writing kind of like love letters to a serial killer in jail, and he convinces her to run an errand that she takes her sister on with her, in which they must deliver this key to this mystical riverman. I'm just gonna leave it at that. This is a really good book to go in blind to because there's a lot of twists and turns. The way it is written is so just atmospheric. It's like a Southern Gothic with cosmic body horror. 2 things that I'm usually not very into, but I loved how it happened in this book. The only reason this novel is a 4-star read for me is because there's a lot of very, very triggering and disturbing scenes that I couldn't justify giving it 5 stars because I found them so disturbing and unnerving, but I adored this book. It sounds very, very weird saying that I adored this book when it really was just that utterly grotesque and it just gets under your skin and you're going to think about it for weeks on end after you've read it. Never read anything like this. If you have read Let the Right One In by Jean Elvide Lindqvist, it's very akin to kind of the macabre, unsettling moments of that novel, and yet those moments further the story and the purpose and intent of the overarching tale, which is why I really liked this moment of extreme horror. Again, extreme horror is not my thing. I keep learning that over and over, but I do think this book is so worth picking up if you have the stomach for it. Okay, next up, this is my first nonfiction read of 2022. I've had this book forever, and I'm so happy I finally got through it. If you guys follow my channel, you will know that I do a series on dark tourism, haunted tourism. I have so many places that I will be visiting in 2022. I just recently went to the Lizzie Borden house, and back in August I went to the Stanley Hotel out in Colorado. So I kind of use this book as a kind of guide to see where I want to go next, and I've definitely picked out some places that I really would like to visit soon. But this is Ghostland, An American History in Haunted Places by Colin Dickey. It is a series of essays basically around the historical truths, I'll put that in quotes, about where haunting legends of famous and notorious haunted places come from. I believe Colin Dickey is very much a skeptic. I don't necessarily think he believes in ghosts, and he is only a few moments where he's like, I could see this actually being paranormal, but he tries very hard to disprove a lot of ghosts and ghost stories with his historical backgrounds. But this is a really interesting book to read if you are, one, interested in haunted America, and two, interested in what led to these historical places being haunted. They talk about Salem in this, they talk about New Orleans, they talk about St. Louis, a lot of really cool, like, old school haunted manors, cemeteries, parks, landmarks. I just absolutely adored this. But I will say, this is a 4-star read for me, primarily because I was a little off-put by how much of a skeptic Colin Dickey is and how much he focused more on the historical aspects of the hauntings instead of like the hauntings themselves. So do with that what you will. However, because he was so skeptical, I did pick up Lore. Dreadful Places by Aaron Mahnke, I think that's how you say it. This is the 3rd book in the series, but it focuses all on haunted places. I'm really excited to see more haunted places and crafting more awesome places that I can hopefully visit in the near future, and of course do videos dissecting my own haunted experiences with them. To continue with that, my 4th book was another nonfiction book, though this is more of like a touristy guidebook. It's about 120 pages, and this is The Ghosts of Manhattan, Legendary Spirits and Notorious Haunts by Dr. Philip Ernest Schoenberg. Dr. Schoenberg is a tour guide. He is also like a paranormal investigator. I really enjoyed this book. As many of you know, I do live in Manhattan, so this was a really cool kind of guidebook to read about haunted places in New York City and the history behind those places. There's a bunch of places that I've known about prior that I'm planning on visiting or I'm already a frequent visitor of, but also a lot of places that I didn't know about and very, very excited to now visit. Edgar Allan Poe and Washington Irving are both very, very well documented and well cited ghosts in New York City, and I have an entire like Edgar Allan Poe Manhattan tour that I'm setting up for hopefully sometime this year. But this was really fun. This was a 4-star read for me. Again, it's just kind of a guidebook to show you like some really cool haunted places in New York City. One If by Land, Two If by Sea, the White Horse Tavern, McSorley's. They're all haunted by some really, really cool ghosts, and I loved reading the history behind them, along with like the sightings and how people have reacted, especially people who have been on these tours that this man hosts, and where he has taken them and what they have seen. So this was just really fun, whimsical. If you're gonna visit Manhattan or you live in Manhattan, I highly recommend picking this up. It goes through the neighborhood, so everything is done geographically instead of by like where ghosts haunt. And the only reason I say that is because like Aaron Burr, Edgar Allan Poe, Mark Twain, they all haunt several places in New York. So they pop up at like different times throughout the book. And while I feel like it could have made more sense to be like, here are all the places Mark Twain haunts and here are all the places Poe haunts, he kind of just goes geographically, so they'll pop up a lot. But I guess from a tour guide perspective, that makes more sense to do it based on geographical locations. But I have so many awesome places that I want to check out now in the city, and a lot of places I didn't know were haunted that I will be going to very, very soon. So 4 stars for this. This was really fun. This is part of a collection of books, I believe, called Haunted America. I just picked up Haunted Salem and Haunted New Orleans because I'm planning on going there later this year, hopefully. So yeah, fun. All right, up next I have I Remember You by Yrsa Sigurðardóttir. I do have an entire video review on this. This was a 3-star read for me. This is a Nordic noir ghost story set in Iceland. This, I believe, is the first Nordic noir story I have read that is based in Iceland. If you've been following my channel, you know how much I adore Nordic noir. And this had been highly recommended to me on many different platforms, and I was so excited for it, and it was just okay. It was a 3-star read pretty much because the book is told in 2 parts, one through the eyes of a psychologist and one through the eyes of these home renovators. And I found all of the parts about the home renovators to be very atmospheric and yet very boring. Very slow burn that never really felt like it paid off, versus the entire storyline with the psychologist is almost this kind of crime whodunit thriller. And that was super engaging and super fun. So when I would get to chapters about the home renovation, it was just such a slog to get through, and I was just so bored with it. Even when there's like ghost sightings happening, it just didn't quite do it for me. However, then I would get to the chapters about the psychologist and I would be really excited with those because I thought the mystery was really interesting. But yeah, if you are a fan of Nordic noir, I definitely don't want to discourage you from picking this one up. I do think it's very unique. It is, again, very atmospheric, very slow burn, and I go very in-depth into my thoughts on this in my full review, which I will have linked above. But I don't know, I just felt like it could have had better character development, and I feel like there was a huge like error in like the translation. Like there just seemed to be something very lost in translation with this book. There were like sentences that just didn't feel correctly structured or didn't quite go anywhere, didn't really make sense. So there was definitely something just off about this story. But overall, this is a fine read. Just nowhere near my favorite Nordic noir story. All right, and last but not least, I do also have a full review on this book on my channel. This is Waif by Samantha Kolesnik. I do think that this book might be in the February Nightworms. They've like hinted that it's going to be a book by Samantha Kolesnik, and this is, I think, her newest release. This was sent to me by my friend Blackacre Doe, and I'm so grateful that he sent it to me. But this is extreme horror, and extreme horror, as I am finding out, is really not my it's just not my genre. I've tried very recently to get more in tune with extreme horror. I read Savage Mountain by John Quick, where I really liked his prose and writing style, but it got way too depraved for me. Gone to See the Riverman actually worked for me, but there were a lot of moments and scenes in that novel that made me very uncomfortable. It was very unsettling. And this was just a lot of body horror and just very upsetting moments for me. This story is about a woman who is in an abusive relationship with her husband, and her husband finds out that she is no longer interested in him and decides that he is going to undergo plastic surgery so he can look like the man of her dreams. And again, you're going to get a lot of body horror, you're going to get a lot of violence towards women, and just a lot of topics that I don't enjoy reading about. And I think that's my thing, is I don't like extreme horror because I don't really want to feel super uncomfortable and unnerved when I read. I read for therapeutic reasons. I read because it is fun for me. And when I read something that's really uncomfortable and unnerving, and the overarching message at the end doesn't solidify any kind of justification for the brutality that I read about, I don't think it's worth it. So again, books like Gone to See the Riverman, I think artistically, stylistically, are very justifiable for the dark topics that they talk about. This one, not so much. This did not stick a landing for me, so after I finished reading it, I just kind of felt gross and icky, and like I didn't really get too much from it. So it was a 2-star read for me, but not because I didn't like the book, just because this is not a book for me. It's not a bad book at all, and I understand why it has such a high rating from a lot of its readers on Goodreads, but this just was not a me book. It's a genre of horror that I just don't think is meant for me. I don't think I'm ever gonna get really into it, but I'm not gonna refuse to read unless I know it's something like The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum, because it is, every now and then there are moments of extreme horror where I do think that it's worth reading and you do get quite a lot out of it. Waif was not one of those novels, but Gone to See the Riverman was. Anyway, so those are my 6 books that I read in January of 2022. Very, very excited with how the year is starting. I'm really happy that I had like a solid amount of ups and downs. I think last year I had in January my first and like I think my only 1-star read. And so I'm happy that I did not have a 1-star read this year, but I did have 2 that I wasn't fully satisfied with. I did have one that would have been a 5-star read had it not been so extreme. And I just started Last Days by Adam Neville, and I am loving it so far. I've heard that that's his best book, and I can see why. I'm about a quarter of the way through it so far, and I'm just devouring it. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, I post every Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays. If you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you all in the next one. Mwah.